Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I use she, her pronouns. And one thing you might not know about me is that I love to grow vegetables, especially lettuce, every single variety of like greens or something that you can put in your salad. And I even tend to geek out on like when to harvest the lettuce, what to do with it, how to store it in the fridge. Ask my family. It can go a little over the top maybe of like how to keep lettuce really fresh for as long as possible. And when I say lettuce, I mean like everything from lovage to sorrel to spinach to dandelion leaves, edible flowers, anything out in the garden that grows, especially in the early spring. Can you tell? I'm already getting excited about talking about it. If you have any questions about lettuce, ask me over on Instagram. Just get ready because I do love to geek out about it. I think that every single person on the planet could be growing their own salad in some way, and it's super easy to do. Okay, I'm also a mom of three, a yoga teacher, podcaster, and founder of Pelvic Health Professionals. And this podcast is not about lettuce, but it was created for you so that each and every week you are connected to the information and inspiration that will support you as you build your unique yoga business. Now, I know that being a yoga entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur at all, but definitely being a yoga entrepreneur, it can be tough. I remember back in my yoga teacher training, I learned so much about teaching asana and so much about yoga philosophy, but hardly anything about running a yoga business and what that would actually mean and how to run a sustainable business. And this is why I love to talk about this on the podcast. If you've been listening to episodes before, you know this. I'm really excited about our guest today because I think it's so great when we can get into the tips that people have learned, usually the hard way, along this journey of being an entrepreneur, so that we can learn from someone's story of what it was like to learn this lesson the hard way, and we might be able to avoid some of that or just find comfort that you're not alone. This week on the podcast, I have a really great friend of mine, Manu, who is going to share 8 lessons that he has learned in starting his yoga business. He shares some really great insights that I think are helpful for anyone who's a new yoga teacher, who's just getting started in their yoga business, all the way up to things that every single yoga teacher and entrepreneur needs to know, regardless of the level of experience or length of time that you've been teaching yoga. And before we get into that interview, Connected Yoga Teachers, I want to tell you that I love how I can, and oftentimes I keep this snippet of things out of the recording that you hear. I go over like how to pronounce someone's name, and I really like to ask for pronouns as well, and just anything else that I need to know before we start the interview. And pronouncing names is one thing that I think is really important. And I have to tell you that even though Manu and I are close friends, I have struggled with pronouncing his name. He knows it. He's been very patient with me, but I want you to hear him pronounce his full name, and then we get into why we're going to use Manu today.
Manu Molina de la Torre. I go by Manu. That's my nickname.
Okay. And what do you prefer?
I prefer if you call me Manu directly, because everyone knows me as Manu, and kind of my brand name, it's with Manu.
Yes.
So I think Manu, it's fine.
Okay. Connected Yoga Teachers, before we get right into the interview today, I want to give 2 shout outs of thank you. First of all, I wanted to send a shout out of thank you to Michelle, who shared this really sweet feedback. Michelle said, "Thank you so much for this. I'm doing my first Zoom class tomorrow morning, And I've been in the Connected Yoga Teacher group all morning panicking because I can't remember, is it gallery or speaker on Zoom? And oh my God, what about this and that? And the funny thing is, I've only opened it up to my previous students because I didn't want to be stressed out. And most of them are even family, LOL. And then I read the sentence below, do it scared and before you are ready. Thank you for that. When I was scrolling through the Facebook group this morning, I was reminded of how generous you've been offering your support, advice, time to jump on Zoom with someone to figure something out. It's amazing. And although I'm quiet in the group, I just need to say thank you so much for all that you do. Much love and a big virtual hug, Michelle. Thank you so much for posting this, Michelle. We all have days like this. Manu and I are actually going to be talking about this in today's interview, about this, like doing it scared and before you feel ready, and what do we do when we feel like we're failing or we're making mistakes. And I just thought that this feedback goes along so well with this. So thank you for being open and honest with us and sharing this with us. I'm curious to hear, how are the Zoom classes going now? I am sure that you have mastered it all, and this feels like a far off, distant memory. I also want to give a shout out to the team over at Schedulicity. I have been using the software for 10 years now, Connected Yoga Teachers, and I really love the customer service over at this company. Let's hear from one of the team members with our hot tip of the week.
Connected Yoga Teachers, this is Chelsea from Schedulicity with a hot tip of the week. Schedulicity's package management add-on is a great option for yoga teachers. This allows you to create an incentive package with a discount that can add value to your students' visits and help ensure their return business. If each one of your classes costs $10, you could create a 5 for $40 package and offer it online. Then, when your clients are booking a class, they'll see this option. Payment is required upfront for packages, so you'll be paid and they'll have a great reason to come back. Maybe one 5-class package is all they need to turn their yoga practice into a habit.
Manu Molina de la Torre is a yoga teacher, a personal trainer, and a coach in Andalusia in the south of Spain. Manu found yoga as a teenager, and in 2010, he took the leap to become a full-time yoga teacher. He's trained in asana, pranayama, meditation, yoga philosophy, and many varieties of fitness and movement modalities. After working for different yoga and fitness studios, Manu decided to start his own venture as a yoga entrepreneur, only to find that he lacked the business skills that were necessary. So he invested in business training for himself and realized that this knowledge could help other yoga teachers in their business as well. Today, Manu helps other yoga and wellness professionals to take the first actionable steps in their vision as online entrepreneurs through one-on-one coaching calls, both online and in person. He coaches both in English and Spanish, and he has his own podcast in Spanish called, help me with this, please forgive me, Manu, Emprendedores del Yoga. Is this like yoga entrepreneurs? I'm going to go look that up. I think it must be. Now, I'm sure you cannot wait, Connected Yoga Teachers, to hear from Manu because he has so much focus in the business of yoga. So we're going to go through 8 yoga business lessons. And I want to tell you that I think this episode is really packed in for the time that we're together. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Manu. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's a great honor to be here.
I am really excited that we get to dive into what I think are going to be 8 things for our yoga teachers, lessons that you've learned along the way. But before we do that, tell us, how did you get started on this yoga journey and also working with yoga teachers?
Well, so I started this yoga journey, I would say the first time that I got in contact with yoga, it would have been when I was around 15 or 16 years old. I was very curious about everything that is kind of counterculture, anything that is, things that are related with nature. And I got attracted to yoga. And I was 15 or 16 years old when I bought my first yoga book, which it's a strange book. There were some poses there, but I really never got to really understand this book. But anyway, I think that was the first contact I had. But then it was back in 2004 when I took my first yoga class. And it was a hatha yoga class. And since the first moment that I took that class, I just fell in love with it. And I felt that I wanted to work as a yoga teacher. I felt that, I had a calling. And so that was in 2004. As I say, I was living in Spain, in the Spanish Pyrenees. Fast forward 2007, I moved to Italy, where I lived for a couple of years and a half or so. And when I moved to Italy, I made the decision that I really wanted to take it kind of more seriously. I really fell in love with the yoga before, and I felt like, okay, this is the time for me to become a yoga teacher. So this is how it started. I basically searched on the internet for any yoga teacher trainings that were in the area. And I found a yoga teacher training in Ashtanga. And back at the time, in 2007, I didn't even know what Ashtanga was. But I was like, okay, this is the only teacher training that is going on at the moment. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to give it a try, see if I like it. And so I went for it. And I even love it even more. Like before I liked yoga, but once I tried Ashtanga, I felt that it was a practice that it was like I really resonated with. I don't know, maybe because I am a very physical person. I really like to exercise and like to move my body. So there was something about this practice that really hooked me. And so that was in 2007. In the summer of 2008, I started to work in a yoga retreat because some of the people that I met in my yoga teacher training, one of them, friend of mine, she owned a yoga retreat in Italy. So I started working there. I don't know, I felt like, I wanted to step into the yoga world. I didn't have my training yet, but I thought, okay, maybe there is a way in which I can get into this world doing what I know how to do right now. And back at the time, I had experience as a gardener, but also I had some experience as a cook. And this is how I started, just like kind of starting with the gardenings. And then at some point, the cook needed a helper. And I stepped in the role of a cook for yoga retreats, for this yoga retreat. So this went on for a few years. In all these years, Shannon, I've been just like kind of traveling a lot. So that was in Italy. And then sometime after, I moved to Dublin in Ireland. And so I continue there practicing Ashtanga and, working here and there with things that were related to the wellness world. And then what happened was in 2010, I went to Mysore, basically. Like when I was in Ireland, I was practicing with a teacher who was coming from the Ashtanga yoga lineage from Patavi Joyce, and like all the people who were working in the studio basically came from the same school, and they advised me to go there to Mysore in India. So in 2010, I went there. Yeah, and what happened was after that, it's kind of a long journey, but fast forward 2004, 14, I went to do my yoga teacher training. That was the second yoga teacher training that I've done. Even though the first one in Italy, I never got to finish that one because that lasted like for 3 years. But
Right.
the second one in Thailand, that was my first complete yoga teacher training. I was teaching back then already because even though I didn't have a certification, but I was practicing for a while, and I visited Mysore, and I had some friends who wanted to learn. Officially got my certification in 2014, fell in love with the place in Thailand. This is a place in the south of Thailand where I got my certification. And the next year I was there working. And basically I've been there since 2015. That was when I moved to Thailand. Worked there. I was working for yoga retreats and also for a wellness sanctuary. And basically in 2018, towards the end of 2018, I decided that it was my time to start working for myself. So that is kind of the big picture of my yoga journey. I would say that I also, during these years, I was training in yoga, but I also took some training in personal training. So I was also taking some fitness training. And over the last couple of years, which has been basically when I started to work for myself, these last couple of years, I've been taking a lot of training in basically business and entrepreneurial courses and things like that, which I realized that I really needed to learn.
So this is amazing. You have 3 branches sort of where you were studying, like you studied to be a yoga teacher, then you studied to be a personal trainer, and also the business side of things. I mean, which came first, the personal trainer or the yoga teacher?
The yoga came first. That was the number one, yeah.
Right. And then in all of your yoga teacher training and your fitness training, was there anything where you covered the business of yoga?
There was. I'm glad that you asked me this question, because this is something that I refer often, and it's a little bit achy sometimes because, when I started to learn about business, and I have to say, Shannon, your podcast, The Connected Yoga Teacher, was an amazing source for me to learn about all of this stuff like business related. When I started to discover all of that, it was a little bit achy to know that in none of my trainings, we have talked about the business aspects of yoga. I kind of remember like in one training, I think it came, the word niche came up, but that's it. That's about it.
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, I feel like that's the common thing. And for our listeners who have taken teacher training that didn't have any business in it, or those of you who are leading teacher training, I used to lead one and I didn't have business within it. And then I realized, oh yeah, like I need to put a business component inside this for these teachers to really feel prepared as they go out there. So then I'm excited now that we get to dive into some lessons that you've learned along the way, because I think it will help our connected yoga teachers to avoid the challenges and the heartache that kind of go along with this. I think it's helpful when we can pinpoint those lessons. What's the first lesson that you want to focus on?
Yeah, well, this is, these lessons, Shannon, is something that I wish, someone had pointed out to me before I started, before I decided to start my entrepreneur journey. And so the first one, I would say, I think it's really, really important to make sure that you have some savings or that you have some source of income. In my experience, I think almost like the word entrepreneur, it's almost became like a little bit fancy. And somehow, if you look at it from the outside, sometimes it feels like, it's something like really cool and really nice. But, it's not, it's great. I love being an entrepreneur, but it is challenging and sometimes I think often we need to be ready for what's coming.
I agree with this so much. And I also just want to pinpoint when some people say to me, I think I'm just going to quit my job and become a yoga teacher. I'm like, hold on. You might want to hold on to that job and teach yoga on the side. Or like you said, save the money until you can quit your job and have like a runway to take off.
Exactly. This is exactly where I wanted to go, because it seems like very fancy, the idea of quitting my job and quitting my day job and just becoming a yoga teacher. And yes, it's great and it can be done, but it needs planning, and for sure you need to have that source of income or those savings, which it's gonna help you, because especially as you know, Shannon, the first months, or I would say like the first years, even the first year or the first couple of years, you're almost sometimes you can be even in the activation part of your business. You're starting to work with people, you're starting to get reviews. So maybe you are not making the income that you were expecting, maybe for sure, or maybe you are not doing the income that you were doing before. So I think they are having this little savings or the half-time, maybe part-time job or some sort of income can be really helpful. And also psychologically, because you don't have the feeling like, say, if you have 1 month or sometimes when you are not able to sell any classes or to make any income from the yoga, at least you have some other sources of income coming.
I think that's such a good point. And I've worked with many yoga teachers who kind of feel like it's one or the other. Like they either have to have that job or quit it. And oftentimes I'll say to them, what would happen if you went to your boss and said, can I move to part-time slowly? And a lot of the time that's been possible. It's just that people can't see it almost.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is a good amount of time for us to look? Let's say that we don't have the option to work part-time and fuel our yoga business. Do you have an amount of time where you're like, well, you need to at least have this much saved up for this amount of time?
Well, I think it would depend on the lifestyle that you have, like if you're someone who need, it depends how much do you need each and every month. I think it's good. This is interesting, because something really important too, which I didn't include today in these tips that I'm sharing, but since you bring this up, I think this is really important to see the expenses, like when to be on the top of your finances, basically, and to be really, really aware of what is the money that is coming out every month.
Yeah, this is such a good point. I think that if our yoga teachers can have a business account, like a separate account where the money comes in and out, it's easier to see. And it doesn't matter if it's like written down on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet to start to track that money for sure. We have a great episode with Steph Crowder. I know that you learned from Steph as well. She did it a while back called the minimum viable income. And that's a great way to kind of calculate. She calls it, like your ramen noodles. If you just ate ramen noodles, what would you need to survive per month, sort of thing. So that's a good episode. What is the next lesson or next tip for our yoga teachers?
So the next lesson is to niche down and to diversify your sources of income. So they are like kind of two things in one. The first one, niching down, I gonna give you credit on this, Shannon, because this was one of the things that still remain in my mind of one of the consultation calls that I had with you, that I have with you. And this is something that, probably I've heard before I hear from you, But, I didn't really pay attention to niching down. But, when I started to really, really niche down and to decided that I wanted to work for some specific kind of population, that really changed so many things, especially the message that I was putting out on my channels, like on my website, on my social media. Before I decided to niche down, I was basically talking to everyone, like I was open to teach yoga to everyone. I remember, like, I was focusing on privates, but even within the privates, I was teaching a friend of mine who she was pregnant, so I was doing yoga for pregnancy. And then I had another client, and he was just like older than 50 years old. So I was basically doing also some group classes and teaching teachers, teaching everyone. So it was like kind of hard for me to put out my message. So when I really started to work on that niching down, and I started to work on my messaging, I think everything was like really, really clear, and I felt that I was talking more directly to the people that I wanted to work with, which were my ideal clients. And it was also much more easy to define and to create the offerings that I wanted to give to these clients, to these ideal clients, because what was happening, it was like when I was looking for this specific niche, I realized that one trait in common was the problems that they were having, or the challenges that they were having. And so it was very easy for me then to find that offering that would help them to somehow to solve those problems.
I'm so glad that this made the list. Now, I'd love for you to expand on, because when you say niche down and diversify your sources of income, oftentimes I'm so glad you put this together, because I think our yoga teachers might feel like, well, I am diversifying, which is the opposite of niching down, which
Yeah.
I know that it isn't, but can you explain like how you do both at the same time? You've explained really well, like that's, pinpointing that problem and really talking to that person, and so that we're not just talking to no one, people feel like we're really talking to them, but how do we diversify inside of that?
Okay, that's it. That's a very good question, Shannon, and I'm glad you asked, because yes, before I niched down, I was diversifying, but still I didn't have a niche. So that was when I was basically doing offerings for everyone. So basically, by diversifying, what I mean is, once you have niched down, once you know the person you want, the person you want to work with, once you know who is your ideal client, then there are different ways in which you can serve them. So, and this is diversifying. So maybe you can offer private classes, one-on-one, or private coaching, or maybe you can also, working with the same ideal customer, with the same ideal client, maybe you can create a workshop or a retreat. And let's say, for instance, I'm just going to make a stereotypical, just like an example. Say that you work for pregnant women in pregnancy. So basically, the offerings you could create in order to diversify, you could have those private classes, but at the same time, maybe you could create like a retreat, for instances. And these are the ways, like seeing the different opportunities in which you can serve your niche audience.
This is so good. And just to clarify for our listeners, this does not mean like a restorative yoga retreat and then a 6-week prenatal yoga series and then a yin online workshop. Like it really, like you said, if you choose that niche, and in your example, it's that prenatal yoga, then you can have lots of different offerings that you share within that niche. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is effective. I mean, it's scary to do it, but each and every time I do it in my business, I realize that I become known more and more for that niche, that specialty. I get tagged more on social media and people reach out more and refer me more. And it ends up that I make more money. But I know that the work is hard. And I know you've done your own work with specializing as well.
Yeah, it's hard, and you and I have talked about this too a few times. It's scary. It's scary to let go of things because, yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, we have that idea, which it's reasonable to think that the most people you help, the more impact you would have. But of course, what happened, and it's that when you want to help like everybody, the message that you're going to be sharing, we've been hearing this over and over again. When you want to help everyone, you end up just like helping nobody.
Yeah, it's so true. Okay, so we have number 1 is save money or have a source of income before you start your yoga business. And don't worry, like if you're already diving in, then look at how you can do that along the way. Then they niche down and diversify. What's number 3?
So the number 3, it's maybe one of the most challenging one, maybe, which is put yourself out there. And when I talk about put yourself out there, it's basically market your services. Talk to the people, talk to your people, tell them what you're doing, and it almost like sometimes you want to do it almost until it becomes kind of your second nature. I think sometimes we have this idea in our heads that maybe we create an offering, say that you already have your niche, you already created your the special offering for your niche, and then we're gonna go and just like kind of do a post on social media, hoping that everyone is gonna sign up for that. And we kind of get upset when that doesn't happen. And of course, there is a lot involved in there. And of course, we know that also social media are a great channel for attracting people, for finding people, but they are not reliable when it comes to advertising ourselves. So, many of us, what I see many yoga teachers is that they share the message only on social media. And maybe they do a few posts and they think that everyone in their audience are gonna go to see that. So I would say just try to think which are the ways in which you can share your message and put yourself out there, including social media, but not limited to social media. So maybe use your email list, which is important. And of course, like if you have a website, put your offerings in your website. And another thing, something that I also found really helpful, and it had a really positive outcome for me, was to do some networking with other professionals who work with your same niche. Like say, for example, you are working with people who are working in the office, so office workers. Maybe you do yoga for office syndrome or something like that. So you may want to partner up with someone. Maybe you want to partner up with a physiotherapist who have a lot of office clients, and then you can do like maybe some little something together. So that will help you to basically expand your audience.
Yeah, I love this. Working with other people is a great way to put yourself out there and get in front of a different audience. Also, this is another part where there might be a myth going on with yoga teachers where they think, well, if I have my niche and I have my offering and I have my website down, then it won't be scary to put myself out there. And I think that it is. Like when I put a new offer together, or even when I am working on promoting an existing offering, there is sometimes a resistance. Like I might I might turn instead to a different project and be like, you know what, I need to revamp my website today instead of sending out that email that tells people what I'm doing. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
What is number 4?
Okay, so number 4 is be willing to listen to people's problems. And I'm going to tell you about something about this because I've heard this, again and again. And, when I started to get interested in learning about business, I would hear this again and again. And yes, like I had that phrase in my head, be willing to listen to people's problems. But I wasn't really aware of what that means. And I have a story for you, a personal story to share with you today and with our audience. And, this happened this year. It was in March 2020. And what happened was, I was having a low on my workshops. I was having less workshops, and I was kind of thinking how to create some offering for yoga teachers with the workshops, and I didn't know exactly where to go. I didn't have an offering that seemed to be attracting. And I was talking with a very good friend of mine. He's a friend with which we get to talk a lot about, personal life, but also, about business and stuff. And I remember that day I was talking to him and I was feeling like kind of a little bit low because I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening, but my workshops recently are not, are kind of going a little bit down. And he told me, he didn't tell me directly, listens to people problem, but he basically told me, it's not about you. It's about, doing something that people really need at this point. What people need at this point, because at one point I was just like, I don't know, maybe, maybe yoga teachers doesn't like my offerings, or I don't know what's going on. And he told me that, and that stuck to me. He was like, okay, just maybe you are not doing the right offering right now. So what happened, that was in March 2020. And that was the day when COVID hit, and everyone just like, we all know, like yoga teachers, we need to move our services online. There was no way that we could keep teaching. So what happened was, I got, exactly the day after I was talking to my friend, I got a few friends, 2 or 3 people contacting me via social media that they wanted to learn to teach online, because teaching online was something that I was doing before. And, it wasn't very popular, but people on my social media, they were seeing that I was offering things online. People in my newsletter, they knew that I was teaching some classes online. And so when they knew that they needed to move their services online because of COVID, they reached to me. And that was amazing, because that was the moment when I put up a little workshop about, teaching how to teach yoga online. And that was a great offering, and I was super glad that I was able to help yoga teachers from all over the world just to learn how to teach yoga online. And it was also a good source of income for me that month. So from that kind of story, I always thought, okay, that was a really, really good thing that I had the conversation with my friend the day before. And he told me to kind of think what people are needing. And then people contacted me the day after with, telling me that they wanted to learn.
Right. Oh, this is so good to really listen to people's problems. And I love how your friend gently said to you, this isn't about you. This is about what people need. And that really did shift this year. I remember making a Zoom demo video, and I was showing people how to teach online just because people had been asking me here and there about it. And I remember giving this whole talk about, here's why you might want to teach online. And that was completely irrelevant as of March of this year. So I'm so glad that you did that. I remember reaching out to you, and I can definitely link to this video in our show notes because you have a really unique way of teaching online where you can demo and see your people and also share videos. So you had figured this out, and that's one of the problems that people were having with teaching online. I feel like number 4 goes right into number 5. Do you want to tell us what number 5 is?
Yeah. Well, number 5 is stay open to change. Yeah, I think
This
I think
year.
we can skip this one.
At least we can laugh about it now.
Yeah. Well, this is this is amazing. Like 2020. Yes, as you say, like kind of the previous story take us into this, which is like this year we had so many changes. We had to change so many things. So yeah, what I think it's important when we think about having a business. For sure, it's important to have a structure. And this is almost like kind of the bones, this is something that needs to be there and needs to be put in place. And, you got your website, you got your systems, you got the things running. But at some point when things change, and this year, 2020 came because, of the pandemic, but even a personal, something personal can happen in a way that, you are not going to be able to operate your business as you usually do. So it's good to have those systems in place. But of course, at the same time, it's super, super important to be open to change and to see how things are changing, and to see how you can adapt with those changes, and how you can also serve your audience. When you have a group of students, when you have an audience and you are helping them, and then maybe there is a huge shift, a huge change, maybe the needs and the problems of your people, they're going to change. So it's also important for us to adapt and to change into that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is so good. And I feel like our yoga teachers, who are sticking with a regular yoga practice, they are doing the work of this, and then they can take that into their business as well, sort of flowing with the change, showing up and seeing, how are things for me today as I come to my yoga mat. Okay. I love that one's on the list. What about number 6?
Okay, so number 6, I think this is really, really important. And basically, this is about a mindset. Basically, number 6 is there are no mistakes, only lessons learned. And this is, like when we start doing things, and, when we start our business, and, we feel it's a big responsibility, and, we want to do things well. And sometimes we want to do things perfect, but of course, we know life happens, and sometimes we're gonna do things which are gonna end up being different the way we plan to, or sometimes we are gonna have some mistakes. However, I don't like to call them mistakes because, we tend to fall sometimes into self-criticism, into thinking that we are not doing good enough, or that we could have done things in a different way. And this is something really important, that we treat ourselves gently, and every mistake that we have, every mistake that we go through, we take it as a lesson learned. And this is the way, for me, this is a mindset, and this is the way to go forward and to move forward. Otherwise, I'm telling you now, like for everyone who wants to become an entrepreneur, like you're gonna do mistakes. We all gonna do mistakes, and I do mistakes every day, and I still doing mistakes. But you know what? I think that they are part of the experience. They are part of the growing process. Sometimes I think about this one. It's almost like when we talk in yoga about svadhyaya or self-study. I think running a business is a great opportunity to put that into practice because, for sure, self-criticism is going to come up, and I wish I would done that in a different way. That's going to come up. But instead of getting caught up with that, I would say take this as an opportunity to observe your process and to learn about that and be gentle on yourself. Something that I would like to say, Shannon, is that when I read books or when I hear some really successful entrepreneurs talking about their career, like the really, really sincere one, they will tell you this. They will tell you that they are failing, constantly failing, and that, they would be learning out of this.
Right. Oh, this is so good. I feel like this mindset shift where we think of these as lessons instead of mistakes is huge. And like you said, we're all making these quote unquote mistakes. And I love also how you pulled the Svadhyaya, that self-study, the philosophy of yoga, into this. I tell the story often that for 30 episodes of the podcast, I was using my microphone backwards. And I didn't, like the day I figured it out, I felt kind of silly because my audio editor was just banging his head against the wall trying to figure out why my sound was so bad. And I watched a YouTube video and I was like, oh, that's why. But I didn't dwell on it. I just, go forward, do the next ones better. And honestly, even this year, I remember just sending an email out to my whole list saying, I want to do better now with everything with the social justice movement that we were seeing. And I cannot dwell on what I did in previous podcast episodes. I just have to keep going forward. So this is a great one. And I also think it ties into number 7, and we've touched on this. So tell us about number 7.
Yes. So number 7, it's just do it despite the fear.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is so good because we all know then that we're going to learn lessons along the way, and it's going to be scary. We talked about it being scary in the niche down and putting yourself out there. This is amazing.
Yeah. I think it's good, as we talked before, to have those that saving or that source of income coming in, just to make sure that that you're gonna be just like kind of losing all your money and having to quit everything. But at the same time, fear is something that comes. I would say personally, fear comes daily to me. But again, it's something that we need to learn to deal with. Fear, I would say fear mostly comes because of the uncertainty. And also, we can talk a lot about uncertainty, what's been happening this year, But even like in a regular life of an entrepreneur, like uncertainty, it's something that it's in the air all the time, Like you kind of constantly need to think how so many things, and so it's scary. It's something that it's not easy for everyone. And maybe also like being an entrepreneur is something that is not for everyone, because it requires some level of, I would say, like be able to deal with that stress of uncertainty. But something what I would say is that if you really feel that this is your calling, if you really feel that you want to work for yourself, and you make sure that you have, that you have the systems in place, I would say just go for it. Like even if you won't make it, at the end, you would be happy that you've done that because you have given yourself the opportunity to try. I would say the only ones who really didn't make it were the ones that really wanted to try, but never went for it. Because, this is something that it will remain for them. Like if I want to do something and I really know in my heart that I want to do it, and I'm not going to go for that because of fear, I know this is something that I will regret my whole life.
Right. Oh, I think this is so good. And it's bringing to mind what it was like for me leaving my very first yoga teacher training and feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can stand in front of people and teach this class. And always tell teachers, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like we're all afraid when we first jump in front of a class and start teaching, and do it, and you'll just get better as you go. There's no other way to be a better yoga teacher than to dive in and start doing it. And it's the same, whether we're sharing a video or doing the podcast or all of the things that we do to put ourselves out there. It's scary for everyone. I haven't met anyone that says like, oh, I never get scared when I'm putting something new out there.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's scary and uncomfortable. That's for sure. But you're always gonna learn something from that.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. These are so good. And so number 8, what is number 8? And then we'll do a summary of all of them.
Well, I would say number 8 is one of the most important, and this is one of them. We started the interview with it, which is educate yourself in different aspects of business. And I think this made a huge shift for me when I started to, because I was doing a lot of training in yoga and fitness, and those were great trainings. And, I thought it was really helpful for people who were working with me, for me to learn all of these things. But when I started to work for myself, I realized that there was this void. There was something was lacking for me. And it was just like how do I market my services, and all of the things, business related things, which I think this sometimes for some yoga teachers, including myself, I would say even before I started to get interested into the business side of yoga, I thought it was just like, business is not for me. I don't know. I don't feel very attracted. But actually, when I started to learn about business, I realized that it's almost like kind of part of life, like business is happening. It's almost like kind of negotiation, and it's exchange, and it's something that is happening. It's part of life, basically. It's happening on a day-to-day basis. So I think this is, if you can educate yourself in a way, as much as you can, I would say just go and read books, listen to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, take classes, hire a coach, do whatever it takes for you to learn about business.
This is so good. I really have this vision that if yoga teachers are running successful businesses, they are going to be the people that are investing into our world. And I know that yoga teachers care about the planet, they care about other people, they care about people's health and wellness. Those are the people that I want to be seeing, generate the income and then invest it in amazing things. And I have heard, through the years and inside my own mind, so I'm glad that you said that it's there. There's some roadblock for us as yoga teachers, or maybe the yoga traditions of like yoga and business don't go together. So I love that you said it's there in our day-to-day lives, so we can decide if we want to educate ourselves and do this consciously, like with a lot of intent and a lot of compassion towards our communities and our earth. To be those people doing that, because there's going to be business, there are business people out there, and how amazing if those business people are attending yoga classes. To me, it really feels itself.
Mm-hmm.
So in summary, we save some money, or we have a source of income before we start. We niche down and diversify our sources of income. We put ourselves out there. We're willing to show up and listen to people's problems and really focus on those problems, because that's where we can serve. Stay open to change, changing the mindset of like, there are no mistakes, only lessons along the way here, and lessons to learn. We're going to do it despite the fear. We can all do it together. And then educate ourselves in the different aspects of business. Is there anything else in summary that you feel would be helpful for our yoga teacher listeners?
I would say that, as I said before, I think being an entrepreneur, it's an amazing journey. And maybe, as I say, maybe it's not for everyone, but for those of you who, if you feel it in your heart that this is what you want to do, I would say just go for it. But bear in mind that this is something that it requires also, it's not that, it's very rare that you open your business and then within the first year, you will become just like kind of a six-figure business. You may be able to do that, but I don't think that it's going to be the case for everyone. So what I would say is that be aware that there is some work, and you need to work in consistency, and there are things that you need to work. Bear in mind that you are doing this job because you want to help other people, and that should be kind of the main thing, to help people. And of course, once you do that, the money will come. But all of this will take time and it will take work. For instance, Shannon, when someone comes to your podcast, they might see that there is this chapter, and maybe there are 100 and something chapters, and you might think that, the chapter are there, and you don't get to really, really know all the work that's behind that, or I don't know, or writing blogs, or, having a mailing list and writing to them like kind of maybe twice a month or something. These are things that require time and consistency. But I think if you kind of exercise those muscles, especially the consistency muscle, I think you get to see results.
Mm-hmm. This is so true. We're coming up to recording our episode number 200 and almost 4 years of the podcast. And there are still people who don't know about it. So I think you're right. You like that consistency of showing up. That's fantastic. And not expecting it to be an overnight thing. It definitely usually isn't that. How can our yoga teachers who want to work with you further, who are feeling like they need some help with the business side of things and any of these things that you've touched on, how can they connect with you and work with you?
Well, so the best place to find me is via my website, which is withmanu.com. And basically, if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter, and you'll find I have a freebie set up. You have a class, a 60-minute class, which is a workshop that I did for basically finding and retaining clients and students. So you can find my offerings there in my website. And also the other way that you can find me is via my Instagram. I hung up in Instagram. My name in Instagram is with.manu.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
So I would say those are the two main places.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'll make sure that we link to them in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today and putting this list together. It's so helpful.
Thank you so much. As I say, I'm super honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Manu. I really loved listening back to this interview. It was really helpful. So I think this is one of those episodes connected yoga teachers are going to have when they're having a tough day, or they're like, why is running a business such a big struggle? Or who else is feeling this way? I think you picked out the really key aspects here in these 8 things to remember. So thank you so much for putting this together, for having this conversation. And connected yoga teachers, Manu and I and another friend of ours are talking about a project that we want to put together for yoga teachers. So stay tuned. I'm sure that you're going to hear more from him and all of us in a new idea that we have for helping yoga teachers. I would love to hear from you about this podcast episode today, Connected Yoga Teachers. If you want to share what your main thing that you've learned as you run your own yoga business, if you would like to share that, or maybe there was something that really stuck with you from today's episode, you can share that in the comment section over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/224. And thank you for being here. I know that your days are busy. If you live anywhere over where near me in Canada, I'm in Eastern Daylight Time right now. The days have gotten a little bit longer, a little bit warmer, and you might be busy out in your yard working. I love listening to podcasts and audiobooks while I'm gardening, walking, hanging out outside, especially cleaning. It really helps me to do cleaning. It's not like I look forward to cleaning that much, but when I can convince myself with a really good podcast or a good book, it's fun to hang out. So thank you for spending the time hanging out here all the way to the end of today's episode. It is an absolute honor to get to hang out with you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I feel grateful each and every day that I get to sit in front of this microphone and connect with you. And as you know, I often have the same question to end the episode. I want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected? Maybe that's to yourself, your yoga practice, or to your community, so that you can share the yoga that lights you up.